I'm not your therapist, but what I'm going to talk about today is going to change your life more than any therapy session could. I'm going to give you a mental tool that can help you gain clarity, manage your emotions, and improve your decision making in real time. This tool is called self-distancing, and it's a technique used by psychologists, coaches, and even high-performance athletes to get out of their own heads and to gain a clear, objective view of challenging situations. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton. I help anyone who's feeling stuck, stagnant, or burned out in life to create positive change in a way that sticks forever. It's that easy. Norman Vincent Peale said, "Change your thoughts and you change your world." I agree. The power to shift your perspective might be one of the ultimate superpowers that we have as humans. Imagine how differently you might respond if you could take a step back and see things from a distance when you're stressed, angry, or overwhelmed. Well, that's what self-distancing is all about, and it's easier to practice than you might think. So today I'm going to explain what self-distancing is, why it works, and how you can use this practice to make better decisions that are more in line with your ultimate goals and vision for yourself, leading to more success and better outcomes down the road. Self-distancing is a psychological strategy that involves viewing your experience from a third-person perspective. Basically, it's acting as if you're an outside observer of your own life. And that might sound simple, and it is in theory, but it's an extremely powerful tool when you use it correctly. Realize though, even though it sounds simple, the act of self-distancing in itself can be a challenge because you only know how to be you. You see everything from your own point of view. You have from the day you were born and you will until the day you die. There's a reason thinking of things in the third person feels weird or even foreign. So that's the first challenge, is to get out of your own head, literally. And that's going to take time and practice. It's not just a switch that you're going to flip on when this episode ends. So I'll outline the steps here for you today, but you're going to have to continue to work on this, reminding yourself and coming back to this challenge over and over again. It can feel like a lot, but trust me, it is worth it. So when it comes to self-distancing, there are 3 different types of distancing that have been shown to be successful in helping you break out of negative or stuck thought patterns. The first is called temporal distancing. The word temporal refers to time. So this is all about imagining how you'll feel about a situation in a month, a year, or even 5. Basically stretching out the time frame. Because when you're in the moment, you're often overcome by emotion. And that's the worst time to make a big decision. But unfortunately, that's also usually when decisions need to be made. You don't always have the luxury for waiting a year to see how things play out. But that's why you do this mental exercise. By imagining that a considerable amount of time has passed, you can see how that change would theoretically play out. And if you want to understand why this works, just simply look back at a time when you were very upset in the past and think about how upsetting is that thing to you now? Does it even really matter? Did that thing that you thought was a huge deal 5 years ago in the moment really play out like you were afraid that it would? I'd bet not. Hey, 1 second before we continue. If you're enjoying this episode, if you're learning something from this show, if you're catching yourself saying, "Man, this is so helpful. This Paul guy is pretty smart." First of all, thank you. But secondly, if that is you, you might have asked, how can I work with Paul? Can he help me create the change I've been looking for? And if you have, you're in luck. Because after 12 years as a coach, both in person and online, for the first time ever, I'm opening up my calendar specifically to talk to you, my podcast listener. Use the link in the show notes to book a completely free coaching session. If you need help with nutrition, fitness, motivation, mindset, basically anything that goes into building your happy, healthy life, then I want to talk to you. Click the link in the show notes and let's chat. I created this podcast to help, and now I want to go deeper. This is the first time I've ever offered anything like this, and I don't know how long it'll last or how long I'll be able to keep doing it, so take advantage while you can. All right, now let's get back to the show. The second form of self-distancing is using a third-person perspective. And to do this, you literally refer to yourself by your name. So if I'm feeling frustrated, I might say, Paul is feeling frustrated about whatever. And that small change in your words creates an emotional distance. Because when things are happening to me, they feel personal. It feels like an attack. And it's something that needs to be handled or solved immediately. But when it's happening to some other guy, some guy named Paul, that can take some of the pressure off. So imagine being a fly on the wall in the room where you're having an argument or a tense moment is taking place. You're no longer taking part of it, but you're an impartial third-party observer. And from that perspective, not the perspective of you in the argument, but the perspective of someone viewing it, you might change how you see things. Instead of being so dug into your point, you might start to say, oh, okay, I can see both sides. And similar to that, a third way for you to practice self-distancing is to imagine that you're giving advice to a friend. If you're in a tricky situation, think of the advice that you'd give someone that you cared about who was in the same situation. Again, this takes away a lot of the sting that you feel when you're too close to something, when it's too personal. It also shifts your perspective to be wider, and you think about things differently. When you think about yourself, you see it again from your own point of view. You see it as the person who's going through the thing. But when you give advice to someone else, you see it from the outside looking in. You see the whole picture, the 30,000-foot view. I say often, you can't read the label from inside the jar. And that's why a coach or a therapist will offer an outside perspective and help you see things differently. And that's why using self-distancing, you can do that for yourself in real time. So these tactics, they might sound simple or even silly, but I promise they work. And here's why. For one, self-distancing can get you out of that feeling of being stuck in rumination. Because when you're too close to your thoughts, it's easy to spiral and obsess on the negative. Self-distancing helps you break out of that cycle by giving you space from those intense emotions. It also reduces your emotional reactivity. By stepping back from a tricky or a tense situation, you can see more rationally. You can start to calm down, and it gives you more control over your responses. This technique can help you with perspective and taking on a more long-term view by shifting you to a more future self viewpoint. And that's why it becomes easier to see problems as temporary. They no longer are a defining part of your identity. And that's huge because a lot of times when you're struggling with something, it can feel even worse because it feels like this is how it's always going to be. It's not stated explicitly, but it's implied. And that becomes a double negative because you're dealing with the actual issue, which is already stressful. But now on top of that, you have this icky feeling of this is how I'm always going to be. I'm always going to have to stay stuck. This is going to be affecting me forever. And the irony is that it actually hardly ever is like that. I mean, just factually, if you're listening to this now, every issue that you've ever been through, you've overcome in some way, and you've been able to get by all of those sticky issues in the past. But in the moment, those things felt like they were impassable. They were insurmountable. And yet you pass them, but it doesn't feel like that in the moment. Remember, just a moment ago, I asked you to think about a time in your life where in that moment, it felt like it was a huge deal. But now in the future, looking back, you can see that it barely even affected you. There was a breakup, losing a job, losing a bunch of money, whatever it was, something happened that you never thought you would recover from, but with time, you did. So factually that, well, I'm just stuck and I'll always be stuck mindset is false, but it doesn't feel that way in the moment. So using self-distancing, you can help yourself get to that realization much faster. Similarly, self-distancing can help you support your pursuits towards behavior change. Because whether it's changing your diet, your exercise, your spending, your dating habits, self-distancing will allow you to take a more objective view and have objective self-reflection. And that can help you see what you need to work on without feeling attacked by your inner critic. Because the objectivity that comes from self-distancing is a key. A lot of times when you're getting down on yourself, you might be ready to quit something that is working, something that you're committed to, but you're judging yourself, holding on to some subjective standard. But when you use self-distancing, you give yourself space and you give yourself the gift of objectivity. And with that, you can see like, oh, actually things aren't as bad as I thought. Maybe I actually am moving forward. Maybe this actually is a good use of my time, my energy, and my attention. And that's what keeps you going on the right path. I see it all the time with my clients in the weight loss world. They'll tell me something like, well, I'm just stuck. This isn't working. It's been a month and I've only lost 3 pounds. But when I hear that, I offer them a different perspective. Say, who said that 3 pounds in a month is bad? What were you doing 2 months ago? And how does this compare to that? Are you proud of the changes that you've made and the trajectory that you're on? And this pulls them out of that subjective value-based judgment where 3 isn't quote unquote good and more would be good, but less is bad, but good and bad are made up. And it points them towards the objective reality that all progress is progress. And that if they're trying now and they weren't before, that's movement in the right direction and better than doing nothing. And that can often be enough to shake them straight and keep them on that train moving forward. And that's what this is all about. The thing about self-distancing is it's easy, which is great. We love easy, except for when it isn't. Because sometimes the easiest things to do are also the easiest things not to do. Or they're the things that you try them once and you go, well, I tried, but that didn't work. And you just move on. But I don't want that for you. So here are 5 ways that you can take self-distancing and implement it in your life today or whenever you're feeling stuck. So no more theory. This is practice. So the first thing you can do is name the emotion and yourself when talking or thinking about what's going on. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, try labeling what you're experiencing. I might say, Paul is feeling overwhelmed because X, Y, and Z. And what this does is takes myself out of the picture and puts it into a third person, like I already said, but additionally, it names the emotion of being overwhelmed. And that has been shown to reduce the intensity of a given emotion by up to half. It takes out a lot of the sting. And then you add your name on top of that instead of the I or me, and it creates psychological space. A second way to put this into action is to take a quote unquote temporal perspective or a longer time view. So imagine you're giving advice to yourself a year from now, looking back on the situation you're in. So ask yourself questions like, will this still matter 6 months from now? Or what would future me a year from now want present me to do? This will help you, again, take the long-term view and see things differently rather than from the inside looking out. You could also use the third-person observation. To do this, picture yourself like you're a character in a movie. So imagine you're watching yourself on a screen and describe the situation in neutral terms. Something like, Paul is really in a tense conversation right now, or Paul got fired from his job, but the hero always figures out a way to a happy ending. And building on that, you could literally write it out as a story. So literally, write down what's happening in your life, but from a third person perspective, almost like you're writing a short fictional story. So you can describe the setting, what happened, and how this quote unquote character felt and responded. That again takes you out of the emotion and allows you to play storyteller where you can craft the perfect ending. And lastly, try looking at the broader picture. Simply take a step back and ask, what does this situation look like from 30,000 feet? Imagine you're telling this story to your best friend. What would they say? Imagine you're on a cross-country flight that's 6 hours long, and you start to tell this story to a stranger sitting next to you. How serious would they think it is? Would they think that this is a world-ending problem like you do? What advice might they give you? Thinking about your issues in this way can help you see if your current feelings or actions are actually serving you in the big picture of your life. And if you don't believe me, take it from Oprah. Throughout her career, Oprah Winfrey has often shared how she practices self-reflection and self-distancing to manage stress and decision-making. In various interviews and on her own conversations, the media mogul has mentioned how she strives to view different situations objectively, asking herself how she would advise a friend facing the same challenge. She said that this helps her gain clarity and maintain emotional balance, especially when dealing with difficult personal or professional situations. I don't think that she would disagree when I say that her ability to self-distance has no doubt contributed to her massive success in all areas of life. So your action step today is to take a step back. Start to practice self-distancing, whatever issue you're facing, and choose one of the self-distancing methods I mentioned, like changing the time frame, talking about it in the third person, or just pretending to be a fly on the wall and observing what happens. Give yourself the mental space to find clarity and make a better decision today. The power of self-distancing truly can't be overstated. Better emotional regulation, clearer thinking, stronger resilience. I encourage you to try one of the self-distancing practices the next time you feel overwhelmed, angry, or stuck. Remember, self-distancing doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. It's about gaining the clarity you need to respond effectively rather than reacting out of habit. So next time you're in a tough situation, take a step back, observe yourself, and see how things shift. That is change made easy. Before you go, I want to talk to you. Literally. For the first time ever in over 12 years as a coach and 4 years doing this podcast, I'm opening up my schedule to help listeners like you for free. I'm offering a free coaching session to you as a thank you for supporting this show. I help people create their healthy habits and happy lives and create positive change around their health, wealth, and relationships. Whatever you're working on, mind, body, and soul, we can cover it all. If you're struggling, I want to help you build a plan to get through it and past it. So go into the show notes and click the link that says book a free call today. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep doing this, and my schedule will fill up. So if you want to take advantage, make it happen ASAP.